All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday. It's almost the end of the day for me, but I'm taking the time to um, explore, not explore, but to discuss and try to expound on the second topic that you will find in your learning packet, and that is all about some ideas about language that I think has to be discussed, has to be thought about, and has to be um, debated on in order for us to correct some misconceptions or some assumptions that we have about language. So if you have the module with you, you can refer to the learning packet to look at the details. I will also be sharing my screen so that everyone will be able to see or be able to use as reference the, the text that you will find on the screen. Okay, so this comic strip that you see is also posted or is also included in your learning packet. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if the writings are readable. It's just basically two people who are playing Scrabble and are arguing whether or not the word apparent is acceptable to use as a play. And so one of them is saying that it's not apparent. Again, this is apparent with an A. And one of them is saying it's not apparent, it's apparent with an E. And so the other person is saying, I know, but it's a common misspelling. A lot of people misspell the word apparent, and instead of using E, they use A. And so that's why he is using the word to play his turn. And so it eventually ends with the two of them arguing because one of them is saying, "Well, the dictionary says that it's not apparent; it's apparent." And so, and you will find the other player shouting prescriptive scum to the other one and turning the Scrabble board over. Now, why did I choose this comic strip? So I chose this comic strip because I wanted to highlight one of the most often argued and debated upon topic, and that is prescriptivism versus what is the other side? Descriptivism. Okay, so prescriptivism is the view that one variety of language is of higher value and should be imposed to the whole community. So this started especially in the concepts of grammar, vocabulary, and reference to pronunciation. So the variety favored is usually a version of the standard of a specific language. So, however, as time went on, the attitude with this, um, the attitude has actually been like a snotty or like holier than thou or on a high horse attitude, especially for those people who are perceived to be using I will use a quote unquote appropriate form of the language. Okay? So, what is the alternative to this? What is the other side of the coin? The other side of the coin is descriptivism. And what is descriptivism? It is a part of linguistics that focuses more on the linguistic diversity, taking note or documenting how language is used instead of enforcing what is so-called standard. Okay? Now, it is important to note that both approaches are important. So we cannot learn and we cannot promote a language focusing solely on the the prescriptivist side, meaning being by the book and just following all the rules and just teaching by the dot. because that is going to be very difficult. But at the same time, you also cannot just say that everyone is given the freedom to use the language however they want, which is what descriptivism is trying to say. Because again, is used was language was invented in order to to facilitate communication. Now, if everyone will use a language according to how they want to use it, then there might be some communication barriers that will arise. Okay, so both of them is important. Actually, it's important to strike a balance between the two. The descriptivist approach, or the descriptive side of the spectrum, is essential because it is the only way we can say that different standards actually matter, and that when we know the facts of language use, we are in a better position to avoid idiosyncrasies of private opinions and to make realistic recommendations about our teaching style. Okay? Now, meaning we rely on the language usage. We have to root our understanding of the language based on how it is being used. Okay, instead of just basing it purely on what is documented or what is written in books or in text. On the other hand, the prescriptive approach provides us with a sense of linguistic values not everyone should possess, and it also forms part of our view of social structure, and it makes us understand our place in it. So, meaning having the prescriptivist approach helps us make sense, helps put order into the chaos that is language. Because you can, to a certain extent, language can be chaotic because it is very dynamic, it is ever changing. Okay? So that's why you need the two perspectives to come together so that you will have the right mix of the two approaches, and therefore you can have the optimum advantages or the best of both worlds. So can you think of examples of the shift towards the center between the prescriptivism and descriptivism? Okay, in your learning packet, I did mention about world Englishes and Philippine Englishes. And I would be one of those students who grew up with the old traditional viewpoint that English is the dominant language and that English is the superior language. And of course, therefore, I have to study and practice follow all the rules and learn and memorize the rules, memorize the pronunciation until I become very good at it. And that is an offshoot of what is perceived to be prescriptivism. I am a part of my learning when I was in elementary. I remember drill method. We had to memorize the grammar rules and then we had to apply it. So that kind of thing. However, now that I'm teaching in the academe, I realized that there has been a steady shift from the prescriptivist or more leaning towards prescriptivist approach when I was young to a more centered or a more central position in the spectrum of prescriptivism and descriptivism. Why is that? Because with the concept of world Englishes, and I know you have already researched about world Englishes is basically the idea that English is no longer the language of the Americans and definitely not the language of the British. That was before. But when English became the lingua franca of the world, it became a world language, meaning it is no longer the same English that is attributed to the Americans and to the British. So because of the um, the start of this idea or this concept of world Englishes also came about the idea that therefore there are also going to be variations of the English language depending on where you are or depending on your context or your place in the world. Okay? So that came about the idea of Philippine English. Now, mind you, I did mention before that I worked in a call center, right? So when I was in the call center, I remember our coaches would tell us there are some what we call Philippinisms. These are, well, I don't use the word Philippinism anymore because in my mind it is a negative connotate. It has a negative connotation in the sense that, as my coach would tell us, Philippinisms are words or phrases or terminologies that only Filipinos use, and that the callers would easily understand or recognize that we are not native English speakers if we use them. Like for example, an example of a Philippinism was fill out the form. No, no, no. Fill up the form. We often hear this. Uh, Fill up the form kaya para masubmit. And my coach would say, you have to be careful. You have to always say, fill out the form, fill out the form. And you know, if you go back and observe, Filipinos are not really good with prepositions and with um, pronouns, especially pronouns that are associated with the sex. Why? Because there are features of our local language that do not support that. So anyway, Filipinos would often struggle with prepositions like uh, "I'm on the bus." I'm on the bus. That's the quote unquote right way to say it. But sometimes Filipinos would say I'm in the bus because we're very literal. Nasa loob na ako ng bus. Nakasakay na ako sa bus. So I'm in the bus. But if you look at the prescriptivist aspect of English as a language, you would say that's wrong because it should be I'm on the bus, right? So that is the prescriptivist aspect of language. So when I say that there is a shift towards the center or the central spectrum, you would see that people are now starting to be more open to these terminologies that were used that were labeled as negative because it would set us apart and it would make other people realize that we are Filipinos. It celebrates that, meaning this is a type of language, this is a type of English that Filipinos use, and it's okay to use it because the meaning is there, the communication is not altered, and therefore there is nothing wrong with it, right? So I hope you were able to answer my question in the book. I mean, in the learning packet, and I hope that made sense. That explanation made sense. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next topic: the equality of languages. Is it true that there is an equality of languages? Do primitive languages exist? So, primitive languages, some people would say these are languages that have simple grammar, a few sounds, and a vocabulary of a few hundred words. And the speakers are able to need to use gestures in order to compensate for the lack of linguistic features. However, as linguists and as future social linguists, we should always be mindful about having um how do you call that, having this high notion of ourselves, like the ethnocentric idea that our language is superior than the others, because there are no languages that are superior from the others. There are no languages of excellence. All languages are of the same status, regardless of whether a language is hard to learn, regardless of whether a language is easier to learn. It doesn't make that language primitive. And even if you say Latin is a very grand language because it's been used for a long time, right? But that's not really true because, well, that who is to say that that is the right way to measure whether language is excellent or not, right? So are there languages of excellence? The belief that some languages are naturally superior than the rest is outdated, and that the idea that one's language is superior than the others is widespread but is still bigoted, and it's still something that we should be correcting. Some people would say, oh, Latin and Greek is a very high level of language because old texts are written in Latin and Greek, and that most of the languages are patterned or taken from that language. However, that I would like to disagree with that, because again, no language is superior than any other languages. Languages are different. There is no standard by which we can measure which language is superior and which language is not. So that there is a language of excellence is a linguistic myth. There is no basis when you say that one language is superior than the other. When you say that English is superior than Filipino or Waray Waray, that is just your own personal bias that is talking, and that doesn't have anything to do with scientific basis. Okay, all languages are equal. Why? Because all languages express the needs of their users. What is the purpose of language? Language was invented for us to be able to express our needs, our thoughts and ideas, and communicate with others. Now, if we are able to do it, then that language is good, right? It works. All languages meet the social and psychological needs of the speaker and are equally deserving of scientific study, because studying language provides us a peek into the nature of humans and into society. Okay, so I hope that those who still have lingering biases against certain languages, you are able to correct that as you go on with the class. Because again, and it's okay, because sometimes we were brought up with these views surrounding us, and therefore we feel that they are correct. But we are critical thinkers, and we should be able to read up and be able to confirm and be able to see if these viewpoints that are surrounding us are actually correct or supported by scientific data. Okay. All right. So the last one on the learning packet that I sent tackled on the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Hypothesis. I will be posting a video on that, because that video summarizes the whole debate between language and thought, and whether or not language exists without thought, and whether a language is influenced by thought, or thought is influenced by language. So please do look out for the 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 video that I will be posting hopefully by tomorrow. Okay. So that would end our discussion for this afternoon. Should there be any questions or comments about the topics that I discussed, you are welcome to post in my YouTube account or here in our Facebook group. All right. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day. I will see you next time. Bye.